Hey y'all, it's Sharon and I'm back to share another policing experience with you guys. If you're new to the channel, I'm a retired detective. I worked for 20 years for a southeastern city in the US and I was also in the military. I'm sharing my experiences along with my perspective in hopes of helping others in similar situations or just to provide a different perspective, that being my own. And with that, I came across this term, the line of demarcation, and I remember learning about it in school and Portugal, and I think it was Spain or Portugal and somebody else. It was a Catholic country, but they were fighting about owning land and territory, and they got in touch with the Pope, and the Pope drew this imaginary line. But I remember the line of demarcation in policing. I was a shield person on two different teams. The first one in with the shield, and during our search warrants and the planning, we would always have this line of demarcation where we use a street coming up to the location we're going to hit the warrant on. And if anything went wrong before that street, we would turn around, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it was always a line of demarcation. We used the street. We always had somebody watching the house before our approach. And if they saw anything unusual, look, as soon as we get up to the street, XYZ is going on, da da da. And if it wasn't in the plan, we were going to turn around. Briefly, I'm telling you what all went into planning. But I remember that term, the line of demarcation. And the reason why I've been sharing all these experiences, because one, when I went through the retaliation and the ostracism of whistleblowing twice, mind you, the first time I did it, I think it was 2003, when I had to tell the truth on some things that were going on, and the retaliation that I experienced and the ostracism. I started to look within. Fast forward a couple of years later, I had to make statements again, truthful statements, and the retaliation and the ostracism that I went through then. I shared this so many times in different videos about how the Holy Spirit, I'm sitting there blaming folks like, well, how could they treat me like this? And this is wrong. I'm telling the truth, and look what they're doing, da da da. And the Holy Spirit was like, no, I need you to look inside. I understand that, these folks, what they did and how they treated you, but I need you to look inside. And it made me smile when I came across this term, the line of demarcation. I was like, I had a couple of those lines within my own heart, I talk about it, especially white men, and my issue with white men, and in my mind I'm thinking they're just low-key racist and downright disrespectful because of my experience when I was 11. I talk about that, and that was a line of demarcation for me within myself, meaning I told you they don't get any breaks when I was policing. No, you're not getting any breaks. If I can help it, if I roll up on you, traffic stop, whatever, you're going to jail. I'm going to find the best way to put you in jail, legally. But that was a line of demarcation for me, meaning I didn't want to step over the wall that I had built. And like I said, there was a couple of lines of demarcation in terms of me and white men, or me and those people, meaning the areas that I policed, and I would look at them and how could they live this way? That was a line of demarcation. And so when I hear it in church and things like that, it's always projected outwards. And when I say always projected outwards, everybody has needs, and I wrote it down and I can't remember. Well, okay, everybody has needs and weaknesses. Your needs and weaknesses are not going to be the same as my needs and weaknesses, but my needs and weaknesses is where I draw a line, and other people do it too, that you have a line. And so when you look at other folks that have differing needs and weaknesses, they're not like me, and I'm sharing my perspective, mind you, they're not like me. So then that tends to allow for the us versus them. If you think about it, their needs and weaknesses are not the same as mine. Their needs and weaknesses, maybe I've had them, and maybe I've accomplished getting over them or getting through them. Now this person is in the same exact spot, but talking about me, I would either look down or look through them, meaning I wouldn't see their needs and weaknesses as being a problem, or I just not even take it into consideration. And that was a line of demarcation when I think about it. But every time I hear it talked about in a spiritual sense, it's usually projected outwards in terms of the world and not being a part of the world and of the world, because I heard somebody say the church is acting and behaving like the world. And how do we fix that if that's the case? As an individual, you got to go inside first. Get rid of some of those lines of demarcation. Once you start getting rid of those lines and knocking down those barriers that you put up, you'll start to, as I mentioned last week about being woke, when my kindness and empathy isn't self-serving, that's when I become aware of everybody else and other situations and other people and their situations. I'm going to talk about being asleep next week, but being woke, remember, when our kindness and empathy is not self-serving, isn't serving me but serving others, that's when you become more aware of your surroundings. But it always comes from the inside out. You have to be aware of what's going on in you, those lines of demarcation that you don't cross. You know, like me and white guys. When I was policing, like I said, every time, if I'm coming in contact with you through a call from somebody or a traffic stop, you're either getting a ticket or you're going to be arrested. Legally, of course. The line of demarcation for me was, why was the wall built? Why was that line made? And was it necessary to just put all white men behind on the other side of that line? No, of course not, it wasn't. And that took some work within me, just like you have to do your own work. And I just want to share that little bit with you guys. Like I said, I'm going to come back and talk about being asleep next week as opposed to being awake. The term has been hijacked, this anti-woke thing. No, I'm not going to let you hijack it, because being woke, like I said, when our kindness and empathy isn't self-serving, needs to be said. Once we take that look inside and start cleaning up the mess in there, it'll affect the outside or everybody else a little bit differently and better. But keep that in mind. I'll talk to you guys next week. Take a look at our online store. The link is in the description. Created some notebooks and some word search puzzles. The links for those are in the description. And always remember, you don't necessarily have to go through a thing to learn from it. Talk to you later. Bye.